morning, afternoon from wherever you are. My name is Brady. Welcome to the Inner Strength Check podcast, and moreover, welcome to the pilot episode for Inner Strength Check Radio, a new series that I'm going to be trialing and experimenting with here on the podcast. So, Inner Strength Check Radio, if you guys are a follower of the blog, you may have noticed that I actually put out a blog post yesterday that has a lot of the information about the process and my thoughts behind getting this series started, both as a video element with footage and also as a standalone audio-only podcast version. So what I will actually do is pop in the show notes a link to that article, which also goes through some of the ideas and concepts that I discuss after we get through the music, the featured artists for today. And I just want to give a shout out to all those featured artists, the PR reps who have sent us the advance albums for unreleased copies, as well as labels and other stakeholders. So thank you guys, and it's my hope that I'll use the Inner Strength Check Radio platform not only to showcase and highlight things like independent or smaller game developers with things like game footage, but also rope in a lot of our sometimes seemingly disparate topical spreads, so things like hobby news, tabletop news, music news, upcoming tours, upcoming releases, recent releases, and some more fun stuff there. So I'm going to keep this relatively brief because I've had to re-record this due to tech goblins and demons. I'd prefer, honestly, for the music to speak for itself. So for this episode, what I'm thinking in future is that I'll have a little bit more, or provide some more info and clarification after each track, just radio style, release dates, that sort of thing. For now, I will leave that to another blog post that's going to accompany this episode. So please do check out the show notes. If you're not entirely bothered by certain sections or artists, I'll also have some timestamps included below. Thank you, and I hope those of you who are watching the YouTube version enjoy the very quirky experience that is Kenshi. You're going to be watching a bunch of hivers, which are basically an insectoid race of people in a brutal post-apocalyptic world. Try to make it by skulking around, doing hard labor, and getting chased around by religious zealots and bloodthirsty homeless bandits. So that's what to expect on the video component. More on that in the next episode, and on the blog ongoing, I'm actually looking at incorporating that footage into separate sort of series and some content which may be weaved into the radio show itself or not. So in terms of what to expect today, we're just going to get straight into it with some music. However, stick around for part 2, the outro, where I'm going to go into a bit of more deeper detail about what to expect from the program ongoing. Time, energy, capacity. I'm hoping this will become a regular or semi-regular feature of our podcast, alongside interviews and topical discussions, that sort of thing. Hope you enjoy, but for now, grab yourself a drink and a snack and kick back and enjoy the tunes and try and figure out what the heck is going on with this game footage if you're actually watching the video. That's about it from me, and that's probably the world's strangest cold open for a radio show, but we're experimenting today and keeping it a little bit loosey-goosey. Things will be a bit more structured in future. Once again, you can check out the show notes linked, as well as the later part of this episode after the music, if you want to get a sense of, number one, what it will involve, number two, how you can give us your input and feedback, and also just some ideas around how I want to involve the Inner Strength Check community more, into both of the podcast and in general. But for now, going to do my typical sign off as always. Peace, love, and grindcore. Thank you. Enjoy.
Taking control of what is mine, and I that I wait for evil gain. From fiction alone to humankind, the sounds of malice are filling the chamber, eternally of torture. By their exchange, strength of
Yeesh, huh? 2 tracks in, and I've already kind of ripped everyone's heads off. First up, we heard from a band from Louisville, Kentucky, formed in 2021, known as Redivider, with their track Sounds of Malice. This track is from the title track for the album of the same name. It drops on the 9th of January in 2026. Redivider have toured with bands like Creeping Death, Crypta, Massacre, Cognitive, and See You Next Tuesday. Great band name, that one. You can definitely tell a strong old school influence in that one. So if you would like some more information around the upcoming release, we will have the press release, artist links, and details for that one for you on the website. Second cab off the rank, and proof once more that just because they're a bunch of nice buddies, friends, guys, and pals, our Canadian friends are capable of some pretty damn heavy music, representing making deathcore brutal again, per their own words, and a sentiment I definitely agree with, by the sounds of the opening track from their upcoming EP. You heard Tales of Massacre. That EP will release on January the 6th, 2026. If you would like to see more or score yourself some physical pre-orders on that one, if you enjoyed the sounds of that one, and you can go to deadwoodmetal.com. Otherwise, on our blog from the Music Monday post from 17th of the 11th, Deadwood were actually one of 3 bands alongside Italy's Abyssi, apologies if I mispronounced that, and Again by Mystery from the US. I will include a link once more in the show notes so that you can hop over there and check out some more of this fantastic maple syrup covered deathcore. For now though, I'm going to take a bit of a different tack since we've kind of blasted through the door and opened up with death metal. I'm actually going to reel it back a bit, and this isn't actually from any official promotional press release. This is actually just a community-derived, freely publicly available ambient sample. I like to dive into places like Freesound and Soundcloud when I'm looking for ambient or chill electronica, as I find it's often an easier way to navigate finding quality artists there than just tapping ambient on, say, Spotify. You never know what you're going to get, right? So coming up, and I will include his links to his profile again in the show notes. This is a bit more of an ambient pads and washers synthy, just something nice to kind of even it out a little bit here. Can't go flat stick all the time, although sometimes maybe I will. So this one is called Abstract World. If you'd like to check out more of this chilled kind of vibe, please follow the links to the Freesound profile, which will be in the show notes. was a nice little track, wasn't it? Prepare yourselves, guys, because it's about to get really heavy. I thought I would put a little bit of an interlude in here just so your ears don't get blasted off. This one is a heavy one. This is Phobocosm.
I do say, Otto, I hope the listeners and viewers are enjoying the content. I prefer the Cantina band theme on repeat for when I need to drown out the cries of Jedi Temple younglings in sheer agony. Up next, we have HyperioN with their track Rewire and Rebuild. Beep whoop beep. Enjoy.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for listening in. You have just heard a track from Reveria's independent release, Affliction in Bloom. The track in particular that you have just heard is called Asphodel. The album is available out now on all major streaming platforms. Before I get back into boring the life out of everyone by flapping my gums too much, I'm just going to announce the last two tracks for release on the first installment of Inner Strength Check Radio. So our penultimate track today will be from El Muerto, a one-man black and death metal project from Amsterdam with the LP, or EP I should say, titled Lost in Amsterdam, which is pretty fitting and funny. The track in question is the opening track, which is called Enthroned in the Tower of the Shadows, brackets, the Lich, end brackets. Now, this last one, I feel like I'm going to have half of Eastern Europe either laughing at me or on my ass about it. I have not looked up how to pronounce this last one. The final track for week one is an experimental progressive extreme metal. Yep, that's it's all those things and more. I'm gonna butcher this. Sorry in advance to the band. Kostatneteni with their track Samotar, which translates to loner. It's from the album Prelisnost, which translates to excess. Okay, hopefully I haven't butchered that too badly. Here are the final two tracks, sending it out with something a bit heavier and something in a bit more of a progressive direction. Thanks for listening. Feel free to stick around if you'd like to hear more about the announcement of my plans for the show ongoing and how you can get involved, and even some potential things like giveaways and stuff. That's coming up soon. And before that is a couple of tracks, one of which I'm sure I've completely whiffed it on the name. So once again, apologies to Kostatneteni. Enjoy, guys. Rightio. You guys have been enjoying some delicious tunes there. If you would like more information on any of the artists that have been shared during my funky little stream, please do consider following through the show notes in the description. There will be hyperlinks available for you to follow through. What I would like to do as a wrap up, as I am pretty sure that 99.98% of you have likely just skipped over the whole brain scrambled egg ADHD mess that was the introduction, because once again, this is unscripted for now, but I'm going to get a little bit more targeted and pointed, obviously with future iterations of this radio show, depending on people's feedback. So this is an opportunity for me to ask for you guys' feedback, and I'm not saying that out of some love me. I have a social life, I have family, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I am, my self-worth contingent on parasocial relationships which may or may not exist, that kind of thing. But one thing that, as a small hobby, volunteer-led corner of the internet, sometimes we get a bit drowned out in the algorithm, and people are busy these days, all that sort of stuff, and I don't often get responses to any kinds of pitches or requests for ideas. I might get a little bit. So if you're listening and you've made it this far, thoughts, feedback, criticisms, obviously be nice, that kind of thing, more than welcome for what you've listened to so far. And yes, I will be editing out the ums and the ahs and that sort of thing in future. Like I said, this is just a real rough kind of first draft, so that you are left with some idea, some inkling of my verbal garbage before you're subjected to some gaming footage and some cool music. This is a few things that I have in store. Now these are existing, apart from featured tracks, which obviously we feature tracks through our heavy news, which is our moniker for music news and that sort of thing. So other than the bleedingly obvious featured tracks, pretty much all of these elements already exist on the blog, and we regularly post these kinds of things. I just thought that, once again, a radio/podcast version might allow us to say, for instance, get some snappier kinds of news announcements out there, or maybe more of them. Anyway, so this is my very rough list, which is why I'm not looking you in the eye, and but I am whispering in your ear, podcast listeners. Hopefully that wasn't too freaky. Anyway, so this is some examples of some things I'd love to see included, and it's open for feedback, thoughts, that sort of thing. And also, this is not an exclusive list either. I would love your input, your feedback on the relevance, or even if you think the feasibility of it, that sort of thing. This is just some of the things I had in mind. Keeping in mind that, again, hashtag AUDHD, autism, ADHD, so I kind of thrive off of chaos and lean into it too. So what sounds like it might be a little bit too much for one person, well, this is my special interest, so I can probably handle it. This is the list. So featured tracks, a huge portion of the advanced promotional materials that we received. So lots of unreleased albums, lots of new singles, new albums, new EPs. Lots of those that we receive, they often come with notifications that certain tracks are cleared for airplay and streaming online in advance. So there's no need to worry about, DCMA or DMCA, which I kind of think, which it is off the top of my head, run DCMA. So there's the opportunity for us to put something out regularly where the bands, obviously I'll be seeking permission wherever possible and crediting artists always. But what I mean is, you haven't seen my inbox. And I'm not your average music promoter, so I'm sure mine's nowhere near as bad as everyone else above me in that industry alone. But on a good day and with the best of intentions and hoovering up emails, it's a relentless assault. There's a lot of, and it's all great music, a lot of great music coming through all the time. And I find myself exasperated, like, how could I ever possibly find the time to even post half of this? So a lot of these promotional materials come from independent artists or from small labels, and they'll indicate which tracks are fine for you to just chuck straight up there. They are approved for, they'll say approved for airplay or streaming. But hey, why not? Obviously I'm going to say check, but if the shoe fits, I mean, my running, I think, 96 possible tracks I could draw from today, and I haven't checked the inbox yet, and it's Music Monday, so that figure was likely to probably 1.25 times after this episode. We get a lot of new music all the time, non-stop, and there are bands flinging from, sometimes we'll get emails and bands are just like, just take it all, take the lot, here's the whole fucking thing, just can you blast it out there somewhere? And I feel like this is a good opportunity for that. So a huge portion of the show is going to be obviously being radio. I didn't cough then, ironically, podcast listeners, don't fake, kids. Huge portion of the show is going to be those tracks, yeah? So, first and foremost, it's, like I said before, it's about supporting the little guy or just supporting alternative publishers in the gaming and music space. Also, though, heavy news. So that's our moniker in general for music news. Yes, I know it's not a great one. Apparently, I'm a fan of dad joke pun titles. Get it? Heavy news, because, like, anyway. Similar to our coverage on the blog, but I'm also thinking perhaps not. So what I mean by that is we post up a lot of promotional materials with some extra bits and bobs put in there, which are sent to us by record labels. But you very rarely do have a music show where the narrator or the orator just literally sits there and rereads the articles that we put out. I feel like that's a little bit clinical, or I don't know. Come on, brain. Your meds are still going. Let's think of a word. Passe, low effort, that sort of thing. I don't know. It's something. It doesn't feel right. But, I'm thinking of someone like Andrew Hogue or Lachlan Watt, like Full Metal Racket. They're not going to sit there and read promotional artist bio. I'm thinking maybe this is a good platform or opportunity to do some more mini reviews, or do some more round robins of recent news, or some reminders. Hey, here's a whole bunch of tour announcements, and I ain't reading the whole press release, but these are just reminding you, these are just the ones that have come out this week. Maybe a similar deal for upcoming releases, big ticket news items of the last week, like a recap, that sort of thing. If you've been on the Inner Strength Check blog, you've probably noticed that, especially this year, I've done a lot more bundling together of several bands at once in terms of like recent upcoming releases. I feel like this radio show is a good opportunity to talk about potentially even more of them. Yay. Dicey news. So that's our kind of coverall for tabletop and video gaming news. Features. Again, dicey news. Yes, it's a shit pun. I know. But I'm really thinking if I was originally intending for this to be like a geeky, a space for geeks as well, why not include that? Obviously, music takes a pretty prime position in the perch in terms of topics, but so does tabletop. And I don't know whether to kind of scatter that sort of news throughout or put it in its own kind of like section, similar to what I was talking about with news, that sort of thing. I don't know, I'm going to have to think about that. But yeah, another thought I had was interviews. So actually straight up just including some interviews. There is a couple of metal podcasts that I feel do that really well, where they actually have some features before they put in the interview. Now, if I was to do so, obviously any interview that I conduct on the podcast would be standalone. There'd be a standalone version, but hey, why not also include it on a radio episode, for example? Because hey, that's what radio shows often do. Team updates. So when I say updates, I don't mean mundane details. I actually mean fun stuff. Because here's the thing, I'm sitting here listiculing and talking about mental health and all these sorts of things. You're listening to something about gaming, hobbies, like yeah, blah blah blah, mental health and discourse and all that sort of stuff. But if all we ever do is expound on the supposed benefits of listening to music or this or that, or you know, us telling you, hey, this album's really awesome, blah 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 blah. You might have noticed on our socials, that sort of thing, like we give our opinions on things a lot, and we tend to talk a lot about things that we've been enjoying, funnily enough. So taking that a step further, and by a step further actually I mean a step more casual, just some updates from the team, the other team members, from myself. Hey man, what have you been doing? That kind of thing. In terms of lately, what have we been reading, watching? What have been some of our thoughts? I feel like it's a good opportunity to utilize that space to talk reflectively about my ongoing journeys with said hobbies, because Lord knows it doesn't, you could, I don't know, Brady, you should get into bouncing a tennis ball at a wall. I'll find a way to make that a perfectionism as procrastination nightmare somehow. And I think a lot of people struggle engaging with staying in hobbies, so it might just be good to hear some honest reflections on how those are going, but also just what we've been enjoying. To take the seriousness out a little bit, hence also the gaming footage used. It's much as I love Hivers, I love Beat, but they're stickmen. They're stickmen fumbling around in the dark. You just watched stickmen fumbling around in the dark to heavy alternative music. That's what you did. So, you know, things we've been consuming of late, and it's an opportunity for myself and everyone else on the team to just have a bit more of that communication. Like, you know, just because I do a lot of brutal, edgy, or experimental music, or whatever, you know, as a writer on ISC podcast doesn't necessarily mean, I don't know, I didn't just really get into Aqua for a week or something, or just because, say for instance, Elodie is really into tabletop, maybe there's a show or some bands that she's been enjoying and we just want to talk about things that we're stoked about. So I feel like it's a nice opportunity for us to just pitch back in you guys, and if we want to talk about some of our small wins, challenges, successes, that kind of thing, you know. And that doesn't have to be performative. It could just be like, hey dude, I started my very first battle jacket, which for those listening, I'm holding up baby's first patch kit because I have fucking way too many shirts that I've accumulated in my life. So I'm starting my first battle jacket at 36. So I don't know, maybe I just pitch in with, oh yeah, I tried sewing and guess what? I suck because I pricked myself. I am a prick. Anyway, ha ha ha. So, updates from the team, but less transactional and more just as casual as they'd like, and as I'm feeling, or maybe more in depth. Just weaving that in if this is to be a regular thing. And obviously, any and all of that applies to you guys. And I'm talking about news, I'm talking about tabletop news, I'm talking about music news. If we haven't covered it, or you feel that not enough people are covering it, or you're in a band, or you are a creative yourself, or you're just a consumer and you just want to see a band get noticed, or you really like what this game developer is doing, or a tabletop publisher at a con gave you their RPG for free, and you just want someone to publicly shout it out over the airwaves, the digital airwaves. More than happy to take some of that on. I really want to get more of your thoughts in general, people. Like, treat this section exactly as per the rest of it. I want to hear your thoughts and your reflections about media that you're enjoying, maybe a hobby that you've picked up or that you are keeping along with, maybe any of your challenges and successes in your creative endeavors, or as exemplified by, say, for instance, Luna with her our interview further back in the podcast. Just info dump on me, info dump on us. Send me a whole world building thing that you've been working on. I don't know, give me some kind of a challenge. Like, dude, I want you to, I don't know, peruse the wiki of something, and please don't make it to, Rule 34 or not safe for work. Kind of want to have some limits around that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? But go watch this weird thing, go look at it, and report back on the next radio episode, or write something about what you thought about it. What did you think about all that? Go for it. I'm down, if you have something written, like a poem, or you just want to email me and be like, dude, I'm so friggin' obsessed with, I don't know, Rocket League or jazz fusion, death metal, or 70s prog at the moment. Look, I don't need to write a review. I just need to just dump somewhere and send it to you. Go for it, maybe that's a good opportunity for you to have some airtime, and obviously as anonymous or as not as you'd like, de-identify, that kind of thing. But it's very one way. If I'm just podcasting down to you and you are just receiving an input, I would love to hear and see people's creations, hear their challenges, hear their successes, hear what people are stoking on right now or are excited for. There's 800 quintillion gigs happening in the next 12 months, it seems. I'm sure some of you out there are stoked for some of them. If you are, tell us about it, man. Email us. There's comment section below. There's comment section on the website. Go for it. I'd love to include more community as part of this, as as part of the general rubric. I really, really, really would like to have a strong community component with this, and I think it would be cool to have something that's, look, I can't make promises I can't keep, but maybe even semi-regular. I don't know what to start off with, but my point is that having a bit more of a feedback loop, giving the community, giving hobbyists, giving music lovers, musicians, creators a chance to speak, to say something, record some shit and send it in. And as long as it's not just an offensive wall of Murdoch media boomer bigotry fuckwit trope, then chances are very, very high that I'm gonna put it on or speak to it, This is just a very long-winded way of me trying to encourage you guys. If you want to get involved, or you're sort of not sure, just get in touch with us. Tell us what you've been stoked on. would you like to come onto the podcast and discuss something that you've been hyperfixated on recently, or a lifelong hyperfixation? And I don't even mean that as like a neurodivergent versus neurotypical thing. Surprisingly enough, not 100% of my personality is all about neurodivergence. Only like 99.8% because I've recently diagnosed. But my point there, people get into things all the time. People fall out of things, passions, hobbies, interests all the time. That's okay. It shouldn't be, the directive shouldn't be that you continually push shit uphill with something that's either not providing the dopamine, or it's just for a different stage of life, or it's just no longer relevant to you. That's okay. And if you want to speak about that kind of thing, that's also your opportunity, you know? I just kind of want to, I just think that a radio style kind of format, as clunky in one way as it may be initially with this sort of format, I think there's a lot of scope for actually broadening our sort of like, and I don't mean in a strength check, I just think that this could be a nice little opportunity to have a little bit more of a feedback loop in a world that is increasingly AI slop riddled, flame war drenched, and honestly isolating by design, right? That's why a lot of people are forming parasocial relationships with individual YouTubers, say, or getting pilled in groups, that kind of thing. It's because we crave that kind of connection, and you can't maintain that level of connection, or at least it's very difficult to, in the absolute irrelevant slop centric and noise riddled platforms we find ourselves on. So I figure, yeah. And speaking of dealing with slop and flame wars and all of that fun stuff, mental health is always an element that I'm looking to expand on with the podcast, and less me as expert. I'd just love to include new finds or insights from ourselves and the community about useful tips and strategies for mental health and well-being in general, and having that as kind of a section. So from things like productivity apps like Evernote, that kind of thing, through to, hey man, this guy has a bang up meditation channel for those of you who have brain and can't sleep without someone softly whispering in your ear about space or whatever the latest thing the algorithms picked up for. Totally not me. Different strategies, tips, tricks, that kind of thing, through to actual like clinical community resources, some local ones for Australians, for Victorians, but also some good international resources. It might be a good forum for us to start identifying creative and industry specific resources. For instance, I know that there are several highly regarded psychologists for musicians in Melbourne, which I can add in as a future thing. And again, it's not me saying, oh, I'm the expert, that kind of thing. I just think this is a platform. I want to take it in some new directions. I want to work with what I've got and the time I have available. I think there is a lot of scope and a lot of potential, and I think a lot of motivation for me to kind of look at the podcast and look at just the absolute, again, at first, seemingly incoherent and disparate topical ideas, and throwing all those vegetables together and making hopefully some form of a half palatable Aldi audio visual pizza. That has been too much ranting. Too much. You've dealt with too much. That's the plan. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, let me know. if it was too much long-winded dribble. I promise you this today has been all off the cuff, completely off the cuff, not enough caffeine, very tired, but just wanting to get something out there. So future episodes will be shorter, or if they're not, each of these segments will be time-stamped, so that you can flag kind of in advance where you want to go if you're not interested, and say, oh, there's a gaming feature, I'm talking about that. I don't like heavier alternative music, in which case I'd say we might not be the podcast for you if you don't like any heavier alternative music, but who knows. Point being, future episodes, more dot-pointed, more to the point, a little bit more of an order and a structure alongside those categories. If you can't even remember a fucking thing I said, because I go verbally in directions that would make, I don't know, the most sandbox RPG blush. That is why there will be show notes accompanying in the link. It's a bit of a reminder. So yeah, that has been a long brain fart of churning through ideas and experimenting, but I think some of you may get the gist, and the one or two people still listening, just want to say thank you for support. Again, check us out, innerstrengthcheckpodcast.com, and yeah, signing off. Peace, love, and grindcore. Thank you.